Well, welcome everybody. Michael Shermer here talking to Deepak Chopra. This is for Skeptic and e-Skeptic and our Science Salon series in which we interview prominent scientists and thinkers on the great subjects of today, which you have often covered in your new book, You Are the Universe. Discovering your cosmic self and why it matters covers, well, the greatest questions there are, which you and I have been dancing around since the early 90s, really since we put you on the cover
I didn't realize it's 25 years.
Yes, it's coming up on a quarter
put
century.
Me on the cover.
Cover
Maybe
of
you'll do it
Skeptic
again.
magazine. We might have to do a redux, Deepak redux. Well, basically because in part, even though our relationship has been up and down in debates and TV shows and so on, you were kind enough to invite my wife and I to your center in Carlsbad, and and part of the reason I wanted to do that was because we seem to be at loggerheads with language, often
talking past each other.
Talking past each other, and so I thought maybe experiencing. Well, this was really my wife's idea. The experience of being in your worldview might help me understand the language that you use. And in terms of how you mean those words. So, the meditation, the yoga, just the peaceful retreat, and everything else that goes with being at your center, I think does.
I have to thank Jennifer.
Yes, well.
Because without her mediation,
yes,
if I may use that word, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
I think that probably more women in politics might also be a good idea in the long run on that, for that same reason. But so in part, I think the worldview differences that we often talk about depend on how we use words and language. And so when you say the universe is conscious or you are the universe, you know in your head what this means. And I often know I'm thinking something different, or maybe not, and this is where we can find agreement or disagreement. As you know, people have made fun of your tweets, and there's even a website about this. And I think even though they're funny because you can't tell the difference between your real tweets and the made-up ones. And I think
they say parody is the best flattery,
yes,
right?
I'm glad you're flattered by that because they didn't mean it flatteringly, as you know. But again, the problem is because you're using these words in one way, or quantum physics uses in maybe a slightly different way, and the general public just intuitively uses words in a completely different way. Then we're often talking at cross purposes. So I thought one thing we could do today is just talk about some of those big terms, like what do you mean by consciousness? When you say, consciousness is primary, or consciousness is the ground of being, or you are the universe, title of your book, because consciousness brings the universe into existence. What do you mean by consciousness?
So consciousness is that which makes experience possible. We are right now having an experience of each other, of this environment, of our own body, of that tree, of the Buddha behind us, of our thoughts, of our feelings, emotions. So it's only possible because there's awareness or consciousness or being. These are synonymous terms. I've been to conferences where they might talk for a week about what is consciousness and disagree. Because, consciousness as defined by an anesthesiologist might mean totally something different.
Right.
So what we are having now is an experience. The best definition I've come across of consciousness is in Eastern wisdom traditions, which is also agreed upon by those who practice meditation and have an experience of consciousness and what we refer to as the modifications of consciousness. So since we have the luxury of time, let me define that in the way it's usually defined. And there's a great teacher, Rupert Spira from England, meditation teacher. He summarized it in the following phrase: consciousness is that in which experience occurs, is that in which experience is known, and this is the third part, is a little difficult to understand, and out of which experience is made. So consciousness is that in which experience occurs, is known and out of which it is made. So right now I'm aware of this experience, right? So where is this experience happening? Well, some people would say in the brain.
Right. I would probably say that.
Yeah, but that's what is called the hard problem of consciousness.
Yeah.
When you look in the brain, there is no table there. There's electrochemical activity, which presumably it represents the experience of this table.
Presumably.
Presumably.
There really is a table here.
Let's wait for
come back to that one. Okay.
Come back to that one in a moment.
Yeah,
okay.
All right.
So the experience of this, whatever this, we are calling it a table, right? But that's a human construct. We could call it a piece of wood. We could call it derived from a tree. We could call it the ecosystem of the tree, the bugs and all the insects and the birds and the flora and fauna, including the rain and the sunshine and the infinite void. So this is a human construct, tree. But whatever, this experience, sound, this experience, texture, this experience, seeing, this experience, if I wanted to, smelling and tasting, is happening, for lack of a better word, in consciousness.
Well, in your brain.
No, the brain has a representation, presumably, which is an electrochemical phenomenon, and that too is an experience in consciousness, right? If I look at the electromagnetic or electrochemical representation, where is that experience happening? Because all I have access to is experience and the knowing of experience.
Right.
So where is that happening? You can't actually say it's in the brain. You can say there's what people call NCC, a neural correlate of consciousness in the brain.
Right.
Everybody would agree to that. That's not controversial.
You can scan the brain
you
and
can
see
scan the brain.
It light up when you do this.
Yeah. So that's called an NCC, a neural correlate.
Right.
But even that seeing is an experience in consciousness. So the brain as a perceptual object is an experience in consciousness. So you say, where is that consciousness? And nobody can find it.
Well, we can find it, the visual cortex back here in the occipital lobe.
So we're getting back to the same thing.
So when we
you
say
can find
neural
correlates. Yeah.
So the correlation, okay, so maybe you want to say correlation is not causation, I'm not sure. But it's certainly a strong indicator that
the brain is involved in that experience, right?
Right.
But the brain itself is also a perceptual object, right?
I'm not sure what you mean by that. You mean, well, the brain doesn't really perceive itself operating.
Yeah, but the brain how do we know there's a brain?
Well, you can take it out of somebody's skull and see they got one and I probably have one.
So you experience it in the same way as this table, right?
Right.
So where is that experience happening? How does this huge expanse of experience, that tree, that window, the sound of that airplane, how does this whole thing fit inside my brain? Where is the location of that experience?
It's represented by the neural impulses.
Okay. So that much we can say.
Yes.
But where is the experience happening? This is the essence of the hard problem. Nobody disagrees on this, okay?
Yeah.
So this is when we are referring to perceptual experiences.
Right.
But there are another kind of experience called mental experience. If I ask you to imagine just now the face of your little Vincent, you have an experience, right?
Yep.
You see
Yep.
a picture.
I can see his little face.
Yeah, but there's no picture in the brain.
Yes. Well.
Also, if I asked you to imagine a beautiful sunset on the ocean.
There's no picture in the brain, but there's neurons firing.
We've agreed to that.
Yeah,
We've agreed. I'm not arguing about that.
Right.
But the essence of the hard problem is still that.
You mean the experience?
Where is the experience?
Maybe we should, for the audience, just define qualia. Because that's what you're talking about, right? The qualitative experience.
The qualitative
Not where red is, because you can see the neurons associated with the red firing, but the experience of redness.
The experience of redness. The experience
That's the hard
of the
problem.
face of your little child, Vincent's child, the experience of the beautiful sunset. Or I would ask you to experience just through intention right now the love that you feel for Vincent.
But presumably someone like our friend Christoph Koch would say, oh, but I can scan Shermer's brain and I can see where he's imaging his own son's face.
It's back to the hard problem.
Or he experiences love and we can do a blood draw and see oxytocin pumping through there.
Okay, so we'll address that. But this is the hard problem.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's no conversation. This is the hard problem.
Yeah.
That we cannot describe how that experience occurs. We cannot explain how that experience occurs. If we could, then there would be no hard problem.
Right. Okay.
Okay. So, notwithstanding whatever Christoph Koch says, or your friend Carol says, or anything. So, where I'm coming from is that the experience is happening in consciousness, and we can't locate that consciousness in the brain or in space-time, because even space-time is an experience in consciousness.
Yeah.
So if we can't locate it, then it is probably doesn't have a form. It's formless. Okay, that means it doesn't have any dimensionality.
Okay, let's back up for just a second and use that simple thought experiment we've heard since Philosophy 101. If a tree falls in a forest and there's no one around to hear it, does it make a sound? Okay, so if you define sound as airwaves bouncing off of an ear and transducing into neural impulses that register as sound, and there's nobody there, of course it makes no sound. But if we just define sound as air vibrations, it doesn't matter if there's anybody there or not. If there's air and a tree falls and it's going to compress the air, then that's sound. So it might come, maybe this comes down to just how you define the specific thing you're talking about.
There's no sound in the absence of hearing.
Again,
what
do you mean by sound? Yeah, if you mean by sound just vibration of air, then of course
you don't
have
just
to have
by
conscious.
sound, I mean the experience of sound. That's all I'm saying.
Yes,
all
okay,
we have access to.
The experience of sound is different than sound.
No, sound is an experience. Before it's an experience, it's the vibration of air molecules.
Yes.
The vibration of air molecules is not sound.
See, I think here we're getting right to our differences between Eastern traditions and maybe Western scientific traditions.
But allow me to explain the Eastern tradition, and then I'll allow you to come up with your version. All I'm saying is, you asked me a question, what is consciousness?
Right.
And I said consciousness is that in which experience occurs, that in which experience is known, and out of which experience is made. So when I said think of your baby, you had a thought. That thought was a modified form of consciousness, a modification of consciousness. When I said picture a red sunset on the ocean, that was a modification. All you had to do is have the intention, right?
Yes, yes.
And then your consciousness modified itself to produce that picture.
Yes.
Let me finish this. So I say, look at this. The looking at this modifies your consciousness into the experience of that, and not what something out there. Okay? So consciousness modifies itself into experience of sensations. Feel the sensations in your body, images, emotions, and what we call sense perceptions, seeing, hearing, touching, tasting. These are the excitations of consciousness, including the experience of a body, because how do you experience your body is you can touch it, smell it, taste it if you want, see it. It's the act of seeing, touching, tasting, smelling that gives you the experience of a body. And then what is a body? It's a human construct based on those qualia experiences. Even a dog has no concept that it's a dog.
Well,
right? It has an
I
experience.
mean, it has maps of its body in its head.
Yeah, but the concept.
And it can distinguish between its body and some other object and move around it. So
Yeah,
it has
so
some,
it has
a
experience.
little self-awareness, less than us.
Okay, but
so a gradation.
Yeah, no, but it has experience, and it has the knowing of
absolutely.
experience.
Yes.
But you know, it doesn't even know that it's referred to as a dog. That's a human concept,
Yes.
construct.
Right.
The dog in the White House doesn't know that Obama is the president of the United States, right?
Well, he knows he's the boss.
Well, he
him.
doesn't. The boss is a human
him.
construct. Yeah, it's a construct. So everything that you describe scientifically is a human construct.
Okay, so by definition, I would agree. I
Okay,
think,
let me finish this
yeah,
argument.
okay, all right.
There's no such thing as a body. That's a human construct. There's no such thing as a human mind. That's a human construct. It's a construct because we have the ability to conceptualize, describe things with words. We created these words. We agreed upon the definition of these words. But all we had is experience, including the stars and the galaxies and the Big Bang, and including the concept of birth, death, God.
Yeah.
These are human constructs based on interpretation of experience. That's it. And the knowing of experience. That's it. That's what the Eastern worldview is.
Okay.
Therefore, consciousness is the ontological primitive. There's no such thing as matter either. Okay, that's a human construct for an experience.
But how is not all of this also a human construct?
It is.
Everything
it
you
is.
just
it
described.
is.
Yeah.
It is.
Okay. So,
that's what I'm saying. There are only constructs. They are
but
scientific.
even the idea that there's only constructs is itself a construct.
Because we have language, right?
Yes.
Because we have language.
But if you don't trust the language over here because it's distortive or illusory, why would you not trust it? Why would you trust it for describing your own world?
All I'm saying is that all systems of thought are constructs because they're systems of thought. Now, the hard problem is we don't know where thought comes from. We don't know where thought comes from. We don't know how a thought is produced.
Because you're not a solipsist.
No, I'm not a solipsist. Solipsist refers to the individual. I'm saying there's no individual. That's also a construct.
Oh, okay, all right.
The individual, Michael, see,
Yes.
you're born, Vincent is born, right? And here he comes into the world and he's experiencing sensations in the body. He's experiencing colors. He's experiencing tastes, smells. Now I'm using words to use that, but there's some experience happening, right?
Right.
Then we come along and we say, your name is Vincent. Your father is a atheist, or could be a religious
Or whatever.
believer.
Yeah.
You're American. You're male. You're Caucasian. Now the poor kid is screwed for the rest of his life because he has started what started as just awareness and experience in awareness now takes on a conditioning. In your case, this will be a scientific conditioning. If it was a Catholic priest, it would be a Catholic
This
conditioning.
is true for
everybody,
all of us. Yeah,
all of
right,
us. So
right,
we
right.
have, all of us, a conditioned mind, which says, you know, it's began with a mythological conditioning, then a religious conditioning, a theological conditioning, now a scientific conditioning. And the scientific conditioning is the best because, you know, it helps you drive your car here. I trust it every time I take an airplane. You know, I trust that
Right. So there
system
is
of thought.
So there is a correspondence to truth that we can get closer to or away from with our constructs. Some constructs are really better than other constructs.
Yeah, but the constructs themselves come out of experience.
So, but it works.
Yeah,
so what?
no question.
Yeah.
But, you know, it doesn't matter if it works. It matters in that I trust my life when every time I step on a jet plane. But I'm looking for a deeper question. What is it that gives rise to these very successful constructs? Okay, what is it? Is there something more fundamental than my experience of this perceptual reality, because this experience is a human experience, right? You would agree that an insect with 100 eyes cannot have this experience. The bat has an experience through the echo of ultrasound. A chameleon's eyeballs swivel on two different axes, presumably a different experience. So what is reality? Is reality a given this?
Well,
or is reality a more fundamental something that gives rise to this experience, including this experience? This is an experience, right?
So you and I and the bat have a different experience of this table. So
it has no concept of a table, forget it.
So the bat flies along, but its sonar still hits this and it flies up and over it without hitting it.
Yeah.
So because there really is a table. Whatever it looks like or feels like or tastes like.
Experience. There is an experience.
But it's an atomic structure that really exists.
Atoms are human constructs
for modes. Apparently they're bat constructs too.
Say that again?
Apparently they're also bat constructs.
Yes, but not, yes, you're right. They're bat constructs, insect constructs, whale constructs, dolphin constructs, etc. So everyday reality that you and I experience is a human construct.
All right, let me come at this another way with an analogy. So you're familiar with the anthropic principle. There's the weak anthropic principle and the strong anthropic principle. And the weak anthropic principle says if the universe didn't have the laws of nature and configurations that it has, we wouldn't be here because you have to have all these fine-tuned numbers and so on. So if they were slightly different and there were no planets or stars, there would be no people to experience planets and stars and so forth. And that's pretty much everyone agrees, well, that's obviously true by definition. The strong anthropic principle is that the universe had to be this way because we are here, or we brought the universe into existence in this way. That's the kind of strong or participatory anthropic principle. And as you know, that's much more controversial. Not all physicists accept that. So when I was reading your book and studying your various other books and lectures and so forth, I got to thinking about this as sort of the weak consciousness principle and the strong consciousness principle. So we're in agreement that with the weak consciousness principle, if my brain is not perceiving the table doesn't really exist. If I'm not alive, if I'm not conscious, there is no experience of any of this, and to my mind, it doesn't exist. But you go further than that. You mean that if I can state it correctly, if I'm stating this correctly, you mean strong consciousness principle, that consciousness itself brings the matter into existence. It makes the universe the way it is. Would that be a correct analogy?
No. Both the weak and the strong anthropic principles are ideas conceived in consciousness. You can't conceive an idea without consciousness. So all scientific theories are conceived in consciousness, all observations are made in consciousness, all experiments are designed in consciousness. You can't get behind consciousness no matter what. So consciousness, I go back to the definition, is what makes experience possible. It's that in which experience occurs, that in which experience is known, out of which experience is made, and out of which experience is interpreted. Now the interpretation, the scientific interpretation, it works for human beings, and we've created technologies.
But even if there were no humans, no conscious Homo sapiens anywhere, let's say we went extinct 50,000 years ago and Neanderthals evolved, or take it back 500,000 years ago, it was Homo erectus, or back 3.5 million years ago and it's just Lucy.
And when we proposed those...
But there really was a Lucy, we have her bones, there really were trees, so there was no constructs, there was no language.
But we construct that now in terms of human experience. We say Lucy, that's a name we give to that experience.
Well, we have to talk, we have to use language to talk.
So we're back to the same problem, right? That when we imagine the Big Bang, when we imagine, how evolution worked, when we imagine Lucy, when we look at those bones, and we construct a story going back 13.8 billion years ago, we do it because we have consciousness, and then we interpret that experience in terms of human experience, not in terms of a bad experience, not in terms of any other experience, in terms of a human experience.
But you don't deny that that past exists before we even came on board to record it.
That past exists, but our experience of how we construct that past is in totally human terms.
Yes, but all cultures have, say, origin myths and stories about where it all came from. And ours, the one you retell in this book from your perspective, you presume, I mean, you speak with confidence, you cite science, is better than, say, the Native American origin myth or the Hebrew origin myth or
For the person embedded in the construct, there's no better or superior.
Because of the correspondence theory of truth, that there is some correspondence between the theory we have and the reality that we think is that we presume is out there.
Yeah, but we can't get behind the fact that we are coming up with a theory because there's consciousness.
Well,
so Max Planck said there's no getting behind consciousness.
Okay, so there's no getting behind, but I'm not sure what that means.
So what that means is, what is the fundamental nature of existence, which is very difficult to define, existence, right? We define existence as this, as this, as this, as that thought. But what is, without the awareness of that, there would be no experience of that, right?
For me and for you, yes, that's true.
Or for the entire human race.
Well, so take the human race out; they're gone. All right,
now,
so,
when you reconstruct
but the planet is still here, the sun is still here, and
the planet is a collection, a conglomeration of sensations, images, feelings, thoughts, and sense perceptions, which we are yet trying to explain as the hard problem, right?
So again, I think we're talking at two different levels.
We are, but let's try and not do that.
Well,
because
it's hard not to.
No, because you know it's the conditioning, right? If I get rid of all conditioning, then I will, and I'm coming from an experiential point of view, is when I get rid of all conditioning whatsoever, including scientific conditioning, because science is a system of thought, and I don't know where thought comes from, then what I'm left with is just awareness and its excitations that I then interpret as mind, body, universe. When in fact, the whole thing might be a human construct. Now, the whole thing. There is no Michael Shermer. That's a name given to an experience. There's no Deepak Chopra. There's no tree. There's no Earth, planet. There's no Mars. There's no rover. There's no men marking on the Mars. They're all fundamentally consciousness and its excitations that human beings, which is another construct. Homo sapiens, you know, we said the wise ones. Who gave that name? We gave that name to it. And what did we give that name to? To an experience. And then we came up with a story around it. Okay, so minus all constructs, what's left? Let's take every construct out. What's left? What's left is awareness.
Wait, awareness is a construct.
I'm using a word.
Right.
Right?
So you can't, you have to take that out too.
So what's left?
Nothing. And then so
now we are coming to something.
Well, no, I think we're at the end of the
No.
end of the epistemological line.
No, we're end of the ontological line. The epistemological is a different
I don't
argument.
know how you could get past. I don't know how you can separate the ontology from the epistemological.
Okay, let me agree with
by
that.
your own, but this is your argument.
No, I like it. I like it. Where you're going, we're left with nothing.
Yeah, right.
That nothing is the experience of everything.
I don't know what that means.
Huh?
So,
Nothing.
What's doing the experiencing?
Even I think Leonard, we'll ask him, but I think, you know, your friends like Lawrence Krauss, everybody, they say that the universe comes from nothing.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay, so
but that word, but the word, as you describe in here, nothing is teeming with quantum foam and virtual particles.
Those are all human constructs.
Well, yes, but
nothing is teeming with possibility.
But according to your description of quantum physics in here, it's pretty damn accurate constructs of quantum physics
that work.
Yeah, that work.
But I don't want to stop there. I want to know a very fundamental reality, which is nothing. That nothing is not in space-time, but gives us the experience of space-time. That nothing is not a human body, but gives us the experience of the human body. That nothing is not the human mind, but gives us the experience of thoughts, sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts. In fact, that nothing is not even an infinite consciousness, because that's a construct. Nothing cannot be conceptualized, because all our imagination is based on experience in space-time. Now, even our best physicists will say that space-time emerged from the construct that we call the Big Bang. What was there before the Big Bang? Nothing.
Right. It's like asking what's north of the North Pole.
Yeah, that's right. So
what time was it before time began?
So if we can just agree on one thing, nothing is the basis of everything, then we have one little step to go further. What is the nature of that nothingness?
I don't know how you could conceive of it. Because without a conscious...
You can't conceive of it, because nothing can be conceived.
Right.
But nothing can be experienced.
It's like asking, where were you before you were born? I didn't exist. Well, you'd answer it differently.
Well, I would say you were never born.
That's a construct?
Birth is a construct based on experience.
Yeah. Okay. Now maybe this is
birth and death are constructs. God is a construct. Matter is a construct. Mind is a construct. Time is a construct.
It's all constructs.
So what is left is nothing. Let's not call it awareness.
Right. But then what? How do you build from there?
You build from there is to experience yourself as nothing.
And you do that through meditation or? Okay.
Meditation is a way where you transcend thought.
Now this is an epistemological difference. You're saying introspection or meditation or just going inward is a source of knowledge. The question is it a reliable source, and how do you know that it's true?
The way I define meditation is to actually experience the progressive quietening of thought till there's no thought left. And then there is no subject-object split. Right now there's a subject-object split. I'm the subject of experience, you're the object of experience. That tree is the object of experience. All science is based on subject-object split.
Yeah.
But that's artificial, right?
Well.
Isn't it?
Yes.
It is artificial.
I guess by definition.
This is one...
But as you know, okay, so this is the other thing.
So it works, right? We make jet planes.
But like in quantum physics, it doesn't have to be a human observer. It could be a camera. It could be a particle accelerator detecting. The observation is not a conscious being.
That's an extension of human observation, nothing else. The camera is an extension of human observation. It's basically, or when we say, I'm looking at background radiation, it's an extension of my senses in one way or another.
Right.
Even the Hadron Collider is an extension of my senses. But even if we go that way, we end up with nothing. If we go with particles and waves, you say particles are things, have units of mass and energy. Waves, if you ask them, ask anyone. In fact, I asked Leonard the other day, so where are waves? And we can ask him again, they say in mathematical space, right? Hilbert space or whatever.
Right.
So waves are basically mathematical imagination. How does that mathematical imagination become the experience of a particle? It's a conundrum. What I'm saying is, reality is much more mysterious than we can ever, not only than we can think, than we can possibly imagine.
I agree, that's possible.
And we do not know the basis of imagination. We don't know the basis of imagination. We don't know the basis of thought. We don't know the basis of any of this, other than we know there are correlates in something that we call a brain, which is another human construct. The brain is a human construct for an experience of sensations, images, feelings, thoughts, sense perceptions in consciousness.
I think maybe, again, we're talking at different levels. Let's go back to
I'll
analogy.
tell you why this is important, right?
All right.
People fear death.
Well, some people do.
So, they fear death, they fear sickness, they fear old age. and then they buy into a construct, God, whatever. Okay, and then they, of course, think their construct is better than the others, they go to war. But what if we realized that the whole thing is an illusion? The whole thing is a illusion. And what if we could actually transcend, and it's actually an experience that people have had for thousands of years. If I could think of the religious or spiritual experience, not as some dead white male in the sky, but as I look at the experience, religion is cultural mythology, I agree. Okay. Science is today's mythology, which is very successful and get better. It's a story of how we interpret experience. But what if we could actually transcend to an experience where, as I see the different spiritual traditions, even the religious traditions, I see three very, very fundamental experiences. One is transcendence. Subject-object distinction disappeared. The beauty of the mountain was breathtaking, time stood still. Or I was listening to this beautiful symphony, and I and the music became one. Or, an everyday experience of...
Okay, so sometimes you can experience that.
Transcendence.
Yeah. Okay.
Second was, out of that experience of the unity between subject and object, emerged spontaneously values like truth, goodness, beauty, harmony, love, compassion, joy, equanimity. And the third thing that I find, with all the other trappings, is the loss of the fear of death, because the transcendent is not in time.
Well, okay. So I think those are
because
three
time
different...
is also an experience. So when I grasp those three things, and I which is part of the whole thing, the ego is also a construct, the individual is a construct, then I am more likely to be peaceful, to be compassionate, to be joyful, and not identify. The I of experience is not a human. There's nobody here, right?
So what you're getting at is the practical, applicable aspects of this theory. That is, if I were to say,
get rid of all
if I was to say, so what? What difference does any of this make other than we're having a fun conversation? You would say, well, it could bring world peace or peace to you personally, me personally, this guy personally, because if you feel like I'm going to transcend my death and exist somewhere else in a conscious state or something.
The me that fears death doesn't
that I won't
exist.
fear. I won't fear that. Okay. I sort of get that. And when you had Eckhart Tolle, at the shrine, and Leonard and I went there, I get it. It's the now by definition, now is all there is. I mean, the past has already happened 3 seconds ago, and beyond is the past. In 3 seconds from now is the future. That hasn't happened yet.
A sentence ago is gone.
Yeah, that's right. So it really is just the now. Okay, so I mean, this would be like the weak consciousness principle. He's right. We would all agree that's true. But as I like to say, and I wrote in my book, but my mortgage is due tomorrow. And so I can't call my bank and go, let's just all live in the now. They're going to go, yeah, well, next Friday your mortgage is due, so you better start living in the future. And now we're back to reality.
Be practical.
What difference does this make? Yeah.
As long as you know it's an illusion, you can play in the illusion, because this is an illusion too, right?
You can call it an illusion, but it's a different kind of illusion than, say, the magic trick. Then we're back to reality. The reality is everything. The illusion, the fun illusion, is just sort of a temporary...
No, we're talking about fundamental reality. I want to know who's the I that is curious about all this.
All right, let me come at it one slightly different way.
Who's the I that wants to know?
Let's take this table for a second. So we know that the atoms here are mostly empty space that it's made out of.
Atoms are constructs.
Yes, okay, that's fine. But you like to talk about quantum physics a lot. And that,
it's a good metaphor.
And atoms are mostly empty space. But I can't pass my hand through the atoms, because at the level we're talking at here, is essentially a solid object. Even though at the atomic scale it's mostly empty space, at the macro level it's mostly solid.
I'm not saying don't be practical. I'm going to take a plane to India tonight.
So we're talking about two different levels.
Yeah, we're talking about two different realities.
Right.
We're talking about what is fundamental and what is everyday reality. And all I'm saying is everyday reality is not fundamental.
Okay, but how do you...
It's a human construct.
So back to the epistemological question, how do you know the Eastern wisdom tradition perspective on reality is the right one versus the one that you're...
Get rid of the Eastern wisdom tradition.
All right.
Okay? Get rid of that. Ask yourself...
That's a construct.
Okay? Ask yourself, what is reality when you take everything away?
Well, nothing. We're back to nothing. It's like who's on third? Third base. Okay, we're sort of cycling around.
See that statue there,
yes,
okay?
Yes, yeah.
That is presumably, although it's not the Far Eastern representation of the Buddha.
Yeah.
So he's sitting under a tree, okay? And what he's experiencing is what you and I call a tree. But, as he experiences sensations, images, feelings, thoughts, he recognizes that they arise and they subside even as they arise. And that actually, in my language, he would say that there are no nouns in the universe. There's only an activity of consciousness that gives that experience, and it arises, subsides, you can't catch it. Okay, so the first thing is, everything we call an object is a process. Okay, because it has no inherent permanence in time. It's a process. The second thing is, where is that process occurring? It's occurring, for lack of a better word, in that which I call me.
Yes.
Where is that me? Can't be found in the body because the body is also an experience in me. Yeah. Can't be found in the mind because the mind is also an experience in me. Well, where is me? Can't be found. So it's nothing. But nothing is not an empty void. He suddenly realizes that that tree is sunshine, rainbows, the infinite void, the earth, the water, the rivers, the oceans. And he has the experience of one wholeness in which subject, object are both an activity of that nothingness, which he calls fundamental reality. And that's if you can experience that on a daily basis, then you can be very practical. You can still do all the things necessary to pay your mortgage, but you don't get bamboozled into the melodrama of everyday existence, which is around constructs. Right now, we have a buffoon who's going to become the president of the United States in another month because people bought into his construct, right? And all of us who prefer the scientific construct are basically screwed because
maybe.
We'll see.
Even hopeful. That's a construct.
Yeah, it's all a construct.
But again, I think so. You're talking at this level, and then we're back to the I got to pay my mortgage at this level. But what you're after is that you can improve the world by reducing.
No, I'm also after the fact that if I get rid of constructs, I have access to creativity.
Well, only the destructive constructs like racism, bigotry.
No, but and
worry about mortgages, anxiety about love. And worries
what
about
I'm also
whatever.
saying is if I get big, sick risks of constructs, all these boxes which are constructs, I have access to, you do agree there's something called creativity, right?
Well, Leonard just wrote a book about that, so we can talk to him.
We can talk. So then I have access to creativity because I've got rid of constructs.
Yes. Well, okay.
I have access to new imagination. I have access to a new kind of intuition. I have access, I would say, to more possibilities because when you take away everything, all is left is possibility. Even when atoms disappear, all they are is possibility waves. So I think that's an interesting adventure to go to the realm of possibility and maybe replace old, which is the history, by the way, of human thought, is getting rid of old constructs and coming up with new.
So is this what you're after in sort of your applicable programs at the Chopra Center? You can change people's constructs and therefore change their lives, their physiology.
See, what happens
their
is,
stress,
what happens is when you get rid of all the constructs and you get to what I call baseline, I have to use the word awareness without constructs, then what we find is, because there are now, I'm going to propose what the worldview says about that construct which we are talking of as consciousness or awareness or being or existence, whatever you want to call it. It's self-regulating, it's self-correcting, it's self-organizing, it is evolving, and as it evolves, it creates new experiences. This is a human experience, not a snail experience, right?
Yes.
So what we call evolution of species then becomes evolution of species of consciousness. Evolution of this self-regulating, self-organizing, self-correcting, and even biologists, they use these words, self-organizing
emergent
principle,
properties.
Emergent properties. Yeah. They use this without ever defining the self. And all I'm saying is, when I use the word self and the word I don't mean Deepak. Because Deepak is just an impermanent experience. In the I, being formless, being non-local, not in space and time, it's not subject to birth and death, which are human constructs.
But they still happen.
They happen because we have bought into the construct.
But even if you don't buy in the construct of death, you're going to die. All of us are.
That which you think you are is going to die because you were born. Well, you have the assumption that you were born. If you don't buy into the concept of birth and death, then there is no such thing.
What? Well, but
death is not an experience, nor is birth an experience. It's what happens in between that's an experience.
Well,
right?
That's everything. That's everything.
But that's an experience in what?
In the real world.
In the real world, that's an experience in consciousness.
100 billion people came before us. They're all dead.
They were all perceptual phenomena in the one consciousness.
What one consciousness?
The one fundamental, nothing, ontological, primitive.
Okay.
Which.
But even that's a construct. This ontological primitive, you can't get behind consciousness.
As long as I said before, Rumi's famous quote,
But how did he get that? I mean, meditation,
through
introspection.
Transcendence.
Yes.
Through transcendence.
Which you can do through meditation. But,
well,
okay, so here's
meditation is, I'll tell you how, again, meditation is getting rid of all constructs, going to the source of thought, whatever the source of thought. No, there's self-reflection. There's something called the wheel of awareness. So the wheel of awareness is five senses: sound, touch, sight, and taste, and smell. The physical body, the interior of the body, mental space, and the web of relationship. When you meditate on all these different aspects of experience, you realize they are all modifications of thought.
But you're choosing constructs that are healthier or less destructive. You're not getting rid of constructs. You're filtering the bad constructs.
And you're also getting
like when you meditate, you get all that thought flooding, right? So you work with your clients there. Go, okay, here's what you do to get rid of the thought flooding.
You can't get rid of a thought, because getting rid of a thought is also a thought. What you do is, if you just allow things to happen, thoughts settle down, and there is transcendence of subject-object split. But then you realize intuitively that it's one wholeness in which all this experience is happening, and that one wholeness it has no dimensionality. Now we can give it a name. If you want to give it a name, and some people would, they'd say that's the divine or God, but again, that then becomes an image.
So what you mean by God is rather different from what most
Well, what I mean by
Westerners.
God is my highest instinct to know myself. my highest instinct to know the nature of existence, my highest instinct to know why this is happening. As Sir, what's his name, the guy who verified the general theory of gravity?
Eddington.
Eddington, he said, something unknown is doing we don't know what.
Right.
Because, it's easy, very complacent for me to say the science can explain this, when, as you know, science cannot explain any of these 9 questions that we have here,
but
right?
Well, there's not total agreement on them. There's different theories, conflicting theories.
What came before the Big Bang?
Yeah.
It's all in mathematical imagination.
Right.
And imagination is a activity of that nothingness. Why does the universe fit together so perfectly? Why is it mathematically precise so we can have this experience? I don't know. Strong anthropic, weak anthropic ideas. Where did time come from? It's an interesting question because the fundamental nature of time is that there's no time. That's a human experience. It's, again, an experience. It's a construct.
Right.
What is the universe made of? I think even your friend Lawrence Krauss would say nothing. Is there design in the universe?
Well, no, it comes from that. It's made of all sorts of stuff, but it comes from nothing.
No, it's not made of. You listen. 70% is dark energy. We don't know what it is.
Right.
26% is dark matter. We don't know what that is. 4% is atomic. Atoms are possibility waves, so we don't know what it is. It's nothing.
Again, we have these are words we use. So when cosmologists talk about dark energy and dark matter, they don't mean that as an explanation. It's just a linguistic placeholder until we figure out what it is.
Okay. In fact, there's no explanation for anything.
Because it's all words.
It's all words.
It's all constructs.
Yeah. There's no explanation.
But you can say that about gravity. Well, we don't, what is gravity? It's the tendency for objects to attract one another.
There's no explanation.
Why do objects attract one another?
There's no explanation for why you and I are here.
But after we finish talking, then if you and I were physicists and we went back to our labs.
Can we finish these?
Yes.
Is the quantum world linked to everyday life? If you say yes, you have a problem. How? Okay. How do atoms and particles create this experience? If you say no, then why is it important? Do we live in a conscious...
in that chapter, you talk about the cell phone, GPS technology depends on quantum physics.
Yeah, experience.
Is that not a correspondence theory of truth that, okay, it must really work because it's really there?
But it doesn't explain why we have that experience.
Well, so what? That's just kind of a different question.
No, the whole point is to what is truth. See, I think of scientists on a journey or a quest for truth. I see artists on a quest for beauty. I see philosophers on a quest for meaning and purpose.
Yeah.
I see religious people on a quest, if they are authentically religious and spiritual, for goodness, morality, ethics. So we are all on a quest without having the faintest idea what this is about.
Right.
And that,
so your purpose is to get people to reflect on the bigger questions.
If nothing else, it gives me deep humility. If nothing else, it gives me a sense of the sacred, if that's not a good word, at least reverence for this.
Spirituality, maybe.
Spirituality. Yeah. And it gives me a feeling that, I have, as this construct, I have very little time. Why am I wasting it arguing with anybody? But because it's also...
Why are you talking
Because it's part of the journey.
Okay.
And all I'm saying is skepticism is very healthy. But then you have to be skeptical about the nature of this.
Yes. I agree. That's okay. That's all good.
Well, I'm very I'm very grateful that we are having this conversation. I'll be honest with you, because we've had this adversarial relationship, and I no longer feel that, by the way. I no longer feel adversarial to Dawkins. I met Lawrence through another mutual friend. And, I realized that we all are tied to our constructs because we're so embedded in them. And it's okay, they work for us.
Right.
Including those guys, who have mythical constructs. For them, it's okay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
okay.
For them, it worked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad that we can expand this conversation. For one thing, I think we can both agree on, I hope, is we don't know what the heck is going on.
Well, as I like to say, it's always okay to say, I don't know. And most of us have, that's a construct. It's hard to give up the idea that we got to know.
So I'll end this conversation with a quote from the great Václav Havel, who said, seek the company of those who are looking for the truth and run away from those who have found it. We haven't found it, Michael. Thank you for joining me.
We have found some truths, but there's plenty of mysteries still.
What we think the truth is, yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you.